Hey everyone, it's Sunday. Therefore, every other Sunday, you get some Ray and Dave time. So welcome to our bi-weekly family check-in with our administrative mastermind recap. We still need to figure that out, Dave. We need like a title that puts...
It's got to be tight, right?
I need to family check-in and the admin mastermind recap like together. So let's brainstorm that really early on. We're going to get started here in just a second, but I want to let you guys know, please throw in the comments who you are, where you're watching from, and I want you to know that for the first half an hour, we're going to focus on your questions. So I would love for you to spend time in the comments for the next like 13 seconds. Kind of play this little, cutesy, clip here. Share with us like what's on your mind today. What happened this weekend that you're excited about? What are you anxious about for this coming week that you're not quite sure how to navigate? What was a huge success of a student that you saw this week? Or what is an area of growth that you're really looking for a student coming this week? Give us every question you have in your mind, whether it be related to your classroom or related to the Teach Better team. Dave and I are here to help. And then during the second half of our time together, we will be talking about the Admin Mastermind that happens twice on Tuesdays. And we'll be recapping some really good conversation. I personally love the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm a huge fan. So let's talk shop all together here in a second. We'll be right back. Dr. Dave Schmitto, how's life?
Oh, life is good. I'm hanging out with you on a Sunday. Does it get any better than that?
I have to tell you, I have been doing these every other Sunday things for a while. And every time I look at my calendar, I'm reminded, Dave's coming up. It's like, I'm so glad 2021, I tricked you into this being a you and me thing, not just a me thing. I'm thrilled.
I feel like I kind of just crashed your private party, but I am not apologizing for it whatsoever. I'm so excited.
The real story of it, and I know that those of people tuning in right now, like you guys know, you've been doing this for a while. We used to go live in our private group every other Sunday, and it was just a Q&A, open Q&A. It was actually sparked from a poll we did back in like 2017. And then you joined us because we were talking about really feeling so much value from the Admin Mastermind that the Teach Better team does every Tuesday. And we kind of wanted to recap the conversation because if you can't tune in, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to get value from it, right? These are good discussion from, decision makers around the world. And so we're trying to find the right time. It just made sense for us to hang out together. So I'm thrilled that the universe required this.
I am so glad that Jeff and Chad fell for that. That's all I got to say. So whatever.
Oh my God, so good. Guys, in the comments, it's already blowing up. I love this. Thank you to all of you who are already sharing your love, saying hello. Remember, everything of tonight is for you because of you. So as you continue to share in the comments, please feel free to start off our question asking for this afternoon. Dave and I are here to talk shop about all the things. We can tell secrets. We can talk about the team. We can talk about classroom. We can talk about hurdles and problems. But our mindset for this first half an hour is really wanting to share as much positive energy, hope, and support as we can. So as you guys throw your questions in the chat, because that's why we're here, we're going to say hi to all of our friends. Dave, are you noticing that a lot of the people that are commenting, we actually saw on Friday?
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like we're in sync here. Yeah, Friday night was so epic, so amazing. It was a little popcorn hangout, adult beverage hangout, just socializing and getting to know people that are part of this amazing network, this amazing community, and just being able to let our hair down, I guess.
Tell us a little about that, Dave. Do you have hair to let down? There's
nothing there. No, but at least we got to socialize and hang out and just get to know people in a way that it's unlike what we normally do. We didn't really talk shop. We just hung out, and it was so good.
Can I gripe about that hangout real quick? Like, can I just, Eve, what is it called when you share your grievances?
It's like Festivus here. Okay.
I share my frustration.
Yeah,
so here's the deal. So Becky and Megan on the Teach Better team throw together this incredible event with the goal of people simply to get to know somebody else in the world that does education to get another person in your PLN, right? So we all come together, we talk shop, people go into breakout rooms, they play games, it got really competitive. There was a lot of laughter and heated discussion because the game was hard. Fine. We all come together, last 15 minutes, no big deal. We do a poll, check. Everyone's like, all right, 10 minutes left. We're winding down. Everyone's going to say their goodbyes. And then all of a sudden,
right?
Jeff Gargis decides to like mic drop the world. What is that guy thinking?
Yeah,
because
seriously.
then it led to like these I just have no words.
Tears were flowing from everybody. Everybody was looking for the record button because he was just, I mean, yeah, it was power. It was power. But I'm hearing through the grapevine, we might get an opportunity to hear something similar again from him soon. So fingers crossed.
I do have to say, guys, the last 10 minutes of the popcorn hangout was dumb. Jeff Gargis was far too inspirational and serious because all of us were laughing, and then he like hit us at the core and like changed the game. So shame on him. And it was so good that there will be a blog post and a bonus episode of Teach Better Talk podcast coming out with that same message. So if you did not join us, don't worry. We felt like it was that important of a message to share. Had to happen.
It was good. It was that good for sure. It was all about the fact that teachers matter, that they are so essential to all that we do. And I think that's one of the things that's come out of this past year of all of the chaos and all the craziness, the importance of teachers and how they matter in absolutely every part of our society. Teachers matter. So
I'm just saying shame on him for, bringing a mic drop moment to an event that was supposed to be about popcorn as quickly as possible. That's all I'm saying. For sure. I love all the comments. There are so many people sharing that they love the popcorn event, that they agreed that, Jeff had this epic mic drop moment at the end. We'd love to also welcome you to share any questions or hurdles you're currently going through, whether it be within your classroom, within your family, within questions you have about the Teach Better team, things that you want to know that might be coming up again. Dave and I actually are live to share as many secrets as humanly possible. So if you want to know, everything about Dave's life and you want to see if I know all of his kids' names, everything's fair game. We're here to talk shop and make sure, with the goal of making sure you are starting your week feeling like you have the solutions you need to be successful. That's really the premise. Dave, I know you have very busy week ahead of you. How are you feeling about that?
I was feeling a little overwhelmed around this time yesterday, but I was able to use today to knock out a bunch of things and actually got to preview some books from some of our friends here, one of which is one of our current ambassadors who has a book coming out, and her book just completely rocked me. It was amazing. So now that I feel like I got some of that stuff out of the way, I'm ready to charge into this week, get to speak to a few people, present a couple of times, teach my class tomorrow night. I feel like it's going to be a good week. We're going to wrap up February, flip the page into March, and spring will be here before we know it.
I love that. See, look at that positive mindset, even though you have a lot on your to-do list. I'm a fan. That's great. We're getting some questions, so we're going to jump over to the comments, start answering your questions. If you're listening right now and you want to know something about Dave or I or the team or something that you're still struggling with for the week, I mean, Dave and I really would love to be your problem-solving partners. We may not have the answer, but the hope would be could brainstorm enough with you and connect you with somebody who could help you find the answer. So I like that. We have a comment here that says, we have not had a third grade curriculum in 6 years. We're getting a new one next year. This is a big deal, Dave. I can only imagine in Destiny's world, but also the same thing's happening actually in my grade level right now.
Okay.
So totally recognizing this concern. Any recommendations on how to make sure you're still very effective with a new curriculum? The goal of the district is not to teach standards in isolation, to teach them thematically. I can.
Ray, you're going first. This is you. This is your world.
No, it's funny because just like Destiny's district and my district, a lot of districts right now are looking at curriculum and saying, We feel like gaps have been created because of the global pandemic. So by implementing a curriculum, we are hopefully not only closing those gaps, but connecting these ideas together. Do you agree?
Well, I think I want to put a pause on this first. So
Okay.
can we define curriculum?
Oh,
I think that opens up a whole can, and we have to make sure that people are on the same train of thought here when we're saying curriculum, right?
what's your mindset on that?
Right. So in a former life, I had a job as an assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction. And I had a staff of more than 200 teachers. And I'd tell you, if I asked 200 teachers, what is curriculum? I would have gotten 200 different answers. So I think it's always interesting to me when we have a district saying we're looking to adopt a new curriculum. So I guess I wanted to Destiny's point, that needs to be your first conversation, is what is the curriculum? Is the curriculum your list of books and resources that you're teaching from? Is your curriculum the way that the standards are all mapped out, like a fidelity guide or a pacing guide? What exactly is a curriculum when you say you haven't had a curriculum in a few years? So that's something that I would want to know. So if you can clarify some of that in the comments for me, Destiny, feel free.
And Destiny, if you don't mind clarifying that in the comments, that would allow us to support you better, because that approach, that initial conversation is really going to help us ensure that we're giving you valuable feedback. While she's typing her answer, Dave, I can tell you that we have always had our standard listed. I teach 6th grade math. We've always had our standards listed in a very specific order with timelines of how we'd like to get those done. But we've never had a resource provided by the district to meet those standards. And so recently my district is saying, we're going to keep our standards as is. Those aren't changing. We'd like to keep the order, the pacing, suggested pacing, but we'd like to spend an obscene amount of money on a textbook. Fine. So, but it was comical because as you're asking questions about what does curriculum mean, I don't know if Destiny's colleagues and have had this conversation, but for us specifically, we said, okay, so bringing in a resource, I mean, gosh, can you imagine how helpful that's going to be for new teachers or teachers that may not know how to meet the standards that are being required? Like, I truly believe that the more resources that we have accessible to us, the better we can be. But does this mean that we are only supposed to use that textbook as a resource? Like, what are the requirements coming from purchasing of the textbook, which I assume could only be maybe the next question.
And I think that's exactly what I would look at this from. I'm looking at this from the district administrator perspective. So I'm glad that you've got the teacher's perspective and I've got the admin perspective here, because I think that is a meeting of the minds that needs to happen. Is your curriculum literally the list of mandates that are in the requirements and the procedures and the policies and the pacing, or is it the supported resources that teachers can choose from? Because what we're seeing more and more often right now are we're getting resources that are being mandated, and we're turning that into curriculum in the name of fidelity, right? These are all words that we've heard ad nauseum now, that we want to make sure, for the sake of the kids, which I understand the intent, we want to make sure that all kids have a similar experience. So we're going to give them all the same resource. But again, this goes back to our earlier conversation. The fact that they don't all have the same teacher means they're not going to get the same experience, because teachers matter more than resources. So I guess I would say, when you're saying we're going to have a new curriculum, really press in and ask those questions. Is this the required resource? Is it identified pacing? Is it required standards? What are we talking about here? So
I know there's a lot of questions flooding in. I love when we talk about fun topics like this, because everyone wants to share their voice, and we want that. So if you're thinking something right now, please put it in the comments. We really do want to hear from you. I think Kimberly brings up a point that a lot of educators are thinking through right now as they're hearing this conversation, saying, well, there's so many resources out there. Why purchase anything these days, especially from maybe a major like textbook company? Because, resources are endless. And I would like to at least add a little bit of a caveat there, saying, yes, resources are endless. I mean, if you have an educator who is willing to explore to find the best resource out there, they're going to end up with a copious amount of tools. I think what the textbook might provide is an even playing field for an educator who doesn't know or isn't aware how to explore, to have access to resources. At least that's a viewpoint I can understand. Not something that I believe should be mandated, but something I can truly get on board with. As a new teacher jumps in and says, what, Dave? So you just want me to like Google 6.EE.4 and understand that the first resource that comes up on Google is maybe the right one? Trying to,
No, and I agree completely. I'm not trying to encourage people to go to TPT or Pinterest or whatever and just say this is pretty and cute and it's got lots of sparkles, so I'm going to use that, because I think that's oftentimes what happens when we don't provide resources that we've been able to vet and curate and say this is good. But I know I'm going to be super biased when I say this, so Destiny, forgive me. Remember my lens. But I would argue that before you start looking at what resources you're going to use, start at the end and say, how are we going to assess whether or not students are making progress? Have the conversation about assessment before you start looking for the resources, because you're going to have literally any textbook company you want come through to your district when they know that there's a credit card attached and a PO and all the invoices are going to be signed and they're going to be paid. They will come to you and they'll all put the sales pitch on, and their sales pitch will revolve around, and we include our own embedded assessments that we created to show that our curriculum works, which is great. But you want your curriculum to work to support what you guys have deemed important based off of the assessments that you have. Your assessments are benchmarks to prove whether or not students are learning and whether or not teaching is effective. So you want resources to demonstrate that, not to demonstrate that a resource works.
It's interesting, Dave. I couldn't agree more with wanting to start with the assessment and then go to the curriculum, then to have the curriculum and then find the assessment that matches. And I think we've designed all of our workshops, our professional development, our courses, everything is start with the standard. How are you assessing the standard? And then what learning opportunities are you going to create or find or create whatever to meet those expectations? And so that same model that an educator might go through at a classroom level is the same when you're talking about bringing in resources, either at a building or a district level as well. So,
right.
Destiny posted a bunch here saying we haven't had anything other than a ready Common Core book, literally just workbook pages with one standard at a time. We tried to come together as a third grade team and make a thematic unit pacing guide. It was not effective. We have 4 units. Okay, all this good stuff. So essentially Destiny is saying that they've tried to get those standards in order, but they haven't really found a way to blend them together.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense. One of her comments earlier was that one of their goals is to take individual standards and turn them into thematic units, which is something that is your area of expertise here, Ray. How you can truly make learning relevant for kids, especially in the area of math, where we tend to isolate things all the time. I know when we talked 2 weeks ago, we were talking about, I think it was subtracting decimals or something along those lines, and how you are intentional about trying to isolate what's the skill we're working on, and can kids master that. However, they're learning this within a bigger construct and a bigger context, so they know how this applies to the real world. And that's the art of teaching. And that's why teachers are so masterful, because that's what they have to do. They have to make learning relevant to kids. So yeah, stay away from the things that say this is simply the one standard we're going to teach on this one day, because that's not going to be relevant to kids.
Well, and I think that you just brought up an interesting point. When you try and create thematic units, if you're just trying to find 2 standards that exist either in different topics or in similar, subject areas, and try and see how they might be able to go together, you're going to run into an issue of I don't know how to describe it, but forcing them to fit together, right? You're going to say, these 2 go together really well. This one might be able to be pulled in, so let's just pretend to make it work. And the students, more often than not, miss the connections, and they just end up learning 3 standards at once, but they don't see how they're blended together. And something that I'm a huge advocate for is finding a situation that exists in your student's world or in a problem that exists in your community, and finding a way for those standards to come together. So whether it be 3 math standards or a math standard, 2 reading standards, and a social studies standard, you're able to bring them together because of a problem or in an age to find a solution. You're going to have a very different approach with students understanding how these pieces come together. So, as a Teach Better team, we use a Teach Further model. We create themed internships that are all sponsored by local businesses to find that purpose. But regardless of how you do it, that's the easiest way to kind of find a fit for multiple standards, at least in my experience.
I love how you said that too, and it was multidisciplinary. And Destiny, I think, was talking third grade, which at the elementary level, it sometimes seems easier for people to look across disciplines, across subject areas, to find those connections. Because oftentimes in elementaries, the one teacher teaches all subject areas. Although I'm seeing it more and more common where people are subject specific or whatever. But you're at the middle school level, and at the middle school level, when you're in a middle school, not necessarily junior high, but a middle school, you see a lot more teaming and a lot more of that cross-cultural collaboration, which is amazing. My hope and my dream is that starts to trickle itself upstream, and we can start to see that more and more in high schools. And it's less departmentalized, and it's less, I have to just teach chemistry, I have to just teach physics. And we can start to see those connections to how things all fit together, because that's what life is like, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you, Dave, when I graduated from college, they were such strong advocates for wanting to see interdisciplinary curriculum planning.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, when you go into a school, try and plan with your science teacher, try and plan with your social studies teacher. And there was this common phrase, and it sounds awful, I don't mean to bash it. It was this beautiful phrase that my professors would proclaim in every class, saying, I hope we graduate enough middle school educators from our school that one day this collaboration will be possible. Because they were essentially saying that this collaboration wasn't a social norm, but the hope would be that they would, instill this mentality and enough educators that this collaboration would exist. And I agree with it. It's wonderful. But what are we going to do in the meantime?
Right.
And so when we started looking at themed units sponsored by organizations or something along those lines with the Teach Further unit, it was, hey, if you're a math teacher and you're working in a building where collaboration is not the norm and your science teacher doesn't want to plan with you and the curriculum guide doesn't work, then don't let that stop you from being a good educator. Bring in those internships anyways. Bring in those thematic units, because even if you're meeting a standard in a science standard in a math classroom, who cares? Like, that's great. It will help support your math standard even more. So don't not do it just because your science teacher doesn't want to be involved.
Right. No, I love that. 21 years ago when I started off in my own classroom, I know I'm old, aren't I? Right. 21 years ago. Yeah. There was everybody who said every teacher is a reading teacher. You remember that was the norm. Every teacher teaches reading. Well, yes, I get it. But think about the standards that you have in your classroom. What we need to do is say every teacher teaches analysis. Every teacher teaches synthesis. Every teacher teaches high order thinking, right? Because if you can start teaching a student how to deconstruct knowledge and synthesize and organize thoughts and compare and contrast, whether you're a math teacher or a science teacher or a social studies teacher, that is going to help students in every subject area. And that's a great way to simply plan in a cross-curriculum and multidisciplinary manner. Teach those complex skills and then let the content be fit in within. So
absolutely. Yeah. And then if it ends up that you teach it and then the science teacher teaches it again and they're the one to evaluate, then
Sweet.
What's negative? That they got the content twice and got more opportunity to master and have a deeper conversation of the information. Good. You saved the science teacher some time, I guess.
There you go. There you go. Yep.
Yeah. So good. So I'm excited for Destiny that she's exploring this. I love that your focus of this conversation was really understanding what curriculum means, because that is a necessary conversation in the dialogue I'm having in my own school district. So I think Destiny going back and thinking through with her committee on her own, hopefully with her leadership, saying, what does curriculum look like? I think it's going to be a big driver for them, the choices and decisions they make moving forward. So it's exciting.
Absolutely.
We have missed so many questions, Dave. The comments.
I'm trying to skim. Yes.
I'm trying to keep going back and being like, we left off here. Let's go back. So I'm going to try not to skip any. I think this was the next one. Jamie's jumping in and says, what advice do you give to educators who are moving from virtual to hybrid learning model to their schools? Oh my gosh, Dave, we've had this conversation. I was so excited to have it again. This is 2020 to a T, and I know we're in 2021, but this is all we talk about.
Yeah, it sure is. And the reality is we've got kids that are moving from virtual to hybrid to remote, sometimes permanently, right? It's this constant back and forth, or it's this constant new awakening where they're starting to find some things that work for them that never worked for them before, and they're wondering if this is going to be their new normal, and we're trying to adjust. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this? Because I know you've done this dance quite a bit this year.
I've experienced this dance. I have as a classroom teacher. You know, I really struggle with, we've all struggled in 2020 trying to find the best decisions we can make at that point in time. And what I'm finding is anytime an educator moves from virtual to hybrid, I think that there's this element of hope, right? Teachers are like, oh my gosh, we're getting closer to what we know and love. We're going to have students back in the classroom. And without a doubt, there is something in the back of your mind of, is this safe? Should we be doing this? All that discussion aside, though, there's a safety of educators being like, we are moving closer to what we're used to, which is exciting. I think the biggest suggestion that I could possibly have for an educator moving from virtual to a hybrid setting is to still have the mentality that they are not in hybrid and actually in remote. And the reason I say that is because depending on how you're running your hybrid setting, you might have students who are remote learning alongside you, even though you're physically in the building with students that are hybrid. And so it truly does depend on the educator's situation, the district's decision. But my biggest suggestion would be to plan to be remote, because that's hard for a lot of educators to think in that way. Because then when you adapt for an in-person setting, whether it be a hybrid or fully in person, it's easier to make that transition versus imagining all your students together and then trying to transition into remote. Does that make sense or no?
No, I think it makes perfect sense. It makes a lot of sense. Can I kind of just go for a minute and you pull the hook on me whenever I need to?
Please.
Because Kimberly made a comment when we were talking about curriculum and books that I think kind of fits with this conversation as well. Her comment was to the essence of, we need resources, especially for our new teachers, so they have something that anchors them and grounds them. Yes. But I would actually take it a step further and say sometimes we need to have new resources to challenge our veteran teachers to get out of what they've always done, so they can see that there's a new way to do things. And I would say that might be an awakening that we're having right now as well, when we're looking at transitioning from remote to hybrid, with this hope that we're getting back to the way it was, right? Yeah. But we've learned a ton of new skills. To your point of when we're remote teachers, remote educators, we have to do things differently. And my hope is that we're holding on to some of these amazing things that we're learning, whether or not we've got kids sitting in front of us, whether or not we've got kids Zooming or Google Meeting or whatever else thing they're doing. I'm hoping that we're embracing some of these things that work. I jokingly said a lot this summer that for the first time in my adult life, I'm actually using a Venn diagram where I've got remote instruction and I've got face-to-face instruction. And right now there's kind of like the sweet spot in the middle where we're seeing all of this great stuff that can work in both worlds, whether it's blended, hybrid, whatever terminology we want to use. And what we have to do right now is focus in on those things that work regardless of the platform, not in one or the other, but what works in both. And I would say amplifying student voice and collaboration are essential things that can work in both realms. And it's the reason why everybody wants to come back to school, so that students can have a voice again and collaborate and share. That's what we need to focus in on. How can we maximize those opportunities regardless of the modality?
So true. Yes. I couldn't agree more. Yes. So in terms of advice, it's maybe making that Venn diagram. I mean, that sounds silly, but it's identifying what was working really well and what you're eager to get back to, what you miss, and how you can find the sweet spot regardless of the situation that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need to have kids collaborating and brainstorming and working together, okay, you can focus in on what are some of the online tools, the Padlets or the Google Forms or the Microsoft Forms that work for you. Cool, you can use those, but what is the ultimate goal behind those activities? It's getting kids to share their voice, share their influence, collaborate. And then you can use all of those different platforms to accomplish your goal. So focus in on what your goal is and then worry about the tools.
Dave, you have good advice sometimes.
Sometimes, every once in a while.
Pretty good. It's so tricky because so many educators have been moving back and forth. My other feedback I would give, and maybe this isn't really what Jamie was asking, but just so you guys know, doing it the second time is way easier than the first time. I don't know if that helps, but like it's the God honest truth that we went from remote to hybrid to remote to back to hybrid. And I'm going to tell you, second time, whether it was second time to remote or second time to hybrid, way easier than the first. So if that adds any sort of comfort, we just went hybrid most recently, right after the Christmas break. And it was my student teacher's first time hybrid. And so she was running into a few hurdles that I was like, oh yeah, you're struggling with this because you weren't here the first time.
Yeah.
I know how to do this. Let me try and catch you up. It's
Ray, do you see that it's easier for the kids the second time as well?
I think so. I really wholeheartedly do. Not so much remote, but hybrid. So I find when we have our students go remote, it's really challenging, I felt, because our students were moving from a unstructured environment to a structured environment back to an unstructured environment in the majority of cases. So I found that to be a little challenging, but they handled it better because they kind of knew what was expected of them because it was familiar. When they came back in a hybrid, the first time they joined hybrid, it was a little awkward. They weren't sure about the masks. We spent so much time with everybody being a little anxious, not knowing what was going to be, expected of them. And the second time it was, okay, this is how school looks right now. There's a little bit of acceptance, kind of like the weight off your shoulders of this is kind of just how it is versus, oh, we're still figuring it out. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I teach 11-year-olds. So thankfully I was able to get back to the sarcasm that I was really missing.
Something else that I heard, and I didn't experience this firsthand, so I'm curious if you did or if anybody else watching did, the physical exhaustion that ensues that first transition back is unreal from what I heard, because what I kept hearing from people is typically when we go back to the classroom after any kind of extended break from being in a classroom, it's after a break, whether it's the winter break or summer break. So you're kind of refreshing, you kind of have that giddy excitement. But when you go back after being remote into this hybrid, it's filled with all kinds of anxiety and stress and nervousness, and you didn't have a break. You were mentally on right up until the last moment, and you're just done after those first or second day. Is that accurate? Or
yeah, here was my comparison, right or wrong, Dave, but I always forget how tiring. Let's go no COVID, right? How tiring the first week of school is, right? I teach middle schoolers. I teach 6th grade. They're 11. It's their first time in the building. We welcome them with excitement. We practice lockers. They're stressed about their schedule. And you just try and get through the stinking week because by Friday, you're exhausted. And I'm always surprised by the first week of August. I'm like, why am I so tired? I've done the first week of school for a decade. Why is the first week so tired? But it's full of student questions and meetings and procedures. And it's like, right? I'm finding that week happens as you transition. So like that week may exist the first week of school for many people who started in a hybrid setting, but regardless of when your first week of hybrid started, it was kind of like having your first week of school again, where, I got to Friday and I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Why? We're 10 weeks into school and you're like, oh, because it was like the first week of school energy again. You're trying to figure things out. You're being pulled into meetings every 5 minutes, just how it is.
And so that's what the question I was going to ask for Jamie, who is a school leader. Would it have been helpful to you, Ray, to have meetings after each day to unpack and reflect, or just leave me alone and let me go crash?
I guess that's such a tricky conversation because I think the reason we had meetings during hybrid was because people were not only excited to be together, but there's so much to communicate. If there's a way to streamline that communication, I think that's definitely nice. But I think there's also a reality to people liking to see each other. We met with our admin the first week, and there was some comfort of being like, we're all together, maybe in masks, but I love my administration. It was great to see them. So it's kind of a balancing act. Let's say that.
Okay. So read your crowd, read the audience, and serve what they need. Gotcha.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. We are doing horrible at looking at these comments.
Sorry.
I apologize. Looks like Jillian's here. Jillian, it's so good to see you. Have you met Jillian, by the way, Dave?
I haven't met anybody face to face. Are you kidding me? When
are we going to meet face to face? That like, when is that happening?
Yeah, let's make that happen. I'll pull out my calendar as soon as we're done here.
Okay, right? Good. Jillian, yeah. I've not met face to face either, but I have phone calls with her on occasion. And let me tell you, this girl could cheer you up on your gloomiest day. So if anyone needs like a Jillian phone call, you make that happen.
I say we go meet up for the first time down at Jillian's place. We'll like connect with her. How's that?
Done. Okay. I'm fine. James says, Ray, we've been virtual almost a year and going hybrid next week for the first time. Jamie, I think that that's wonderful. There are so many hesitations anytime somebody goes hybrid, but I keep telling teachers, and maybe Dave, this is inappropriate to say, but I was on a podcast recently where someone really wanted me to take a stance on if schools should be open or closed. And my mindset was, and I apologize for being so blunt, but that's not my job to determine, right? Like it's the communities, it's the school leaders, it's the Board of Education. It's not my job. What I really hold true is that my job is to support educators once the decision is made for them. Mm-hmm. So when, as we're looking at schools opening, it's not my job to say, oh, Jamie, I'm so glad your school's opening. Thank goodness you're finally going back to a hybrid model. But more so, once you know what's being dealt, what cards you have, how are you going to get the most fulfilling and impactful and effective process humanly possible? Mm-hmm. And Jamie, my suggestion for you would be to pretend it's the first week of school where you shower your teachers with positivity and you celebrate the students to the highest extent and you give grace and empathy as much as possible, because that first week of school is always so magical. And what a wonderful opportunity that we have right in this moment to kind of recreate it, right?
Oh, I love that. So cool. That reminds me of every June or July when you're first given your schedule and you get to see the kids' names. And there's always somebody that says, oh my gosh, you've got Johnny, or oh my gosh, look at your third hour. But it truly is up to you to make the most of whatever those cards are. Somebody else created that schedule for you. Somebody else gave you Johnny or Susie because they thought that was best for Johnny or Susie. And it's truly up to you as the educator to make it the most magical experience you can possibly make. Good, bad, ugly, whatever. Handle what you've got to the best of your ability, because as Mr. Gargas told us, teachers are essential, right? They're the ones that make the difference.
They're so essential. This is why I love our Teach Better family. Not only to be able to discuss with you, because I love your insight, Dave, but like Kimberly being like, you got this, Jamie. Like that's right. What this team is all about. This Teach Better mindset is better today, better tomorrow. So whatever cards you're being dealt right now, even if you feel like it's so challenging, or maybe you're having a great week, maybe you got good news this weekend. Like we just want to be here to celebrate you and support you and hope that your week's going to go strong. So I think that's so exciting. So cool stuff, Dave. This is good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love this. I love, first of all, the trust that people have to think they can throw a question out here and they're actually going to get answers from people, whether it's the two of us or everybody else watching. The fact that they realize that this is a place where they can turn for help is just, man, it gives me like butterflies inside. It's like overwhelming. It's so stinking cool.
Can I just say, Dave, because I know this is a spoiler, but I don't care, because like unless they're watching right now, they're not going to notice if we give a spoiler at the 38-minute mark. So you and I did a course together that's coming out in 2 weeks. Maybe it comes out in a week. Regardless, it's not announced that it's coming out. And I love that in each module, we essentially did this. Like, don't you feel like we're having deja vu? We recorded a course and kind of brought up a topic and just talk shop. And I think that there's so much value in just having open dialogue around things.
And it's something that we miss so much in schools. Even when we are face-to-face, we miss the opportunity to just talk shop, to talk to the person across the hall or in the staff lounge and just break down topics that are, that are confusing, that are complex, that we might not see eye to eye on. And I love the fact that we can do that on a regular basis. I'm excited about that course. It's gonna be a good one.
So exciting. I'm excited about it too. It should be really good. There's only one thing that Jeff had a question on before we launched, and I'm ignoring his question right now. I guess I have to maybe respond to him tomorrow. But have you ever done that where you get an email and you're like, I'm gonna wait for that one. I'm gonna wait a little bit.
I've got 2 sitting on my phone right now, honestly, that
I'm sorry.
I'll respond eventually.
Did you say you only have 2 emails in your inbox?
No. I have 2 of those that I'm looking at like, I'm not responding just yet.
Oh, because I want to say currently, for those of you who always text me or email me and tell me I don't respond to your emails, right now I have 54 emails in my inbox right now.
Okay, here's a question. Before you tell us more, do you have more DMs waiting for you or more emails? Like, how do people contact you, Ray?
I get contacted. Okay, let's talk about this for real. So I have people direct message me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Okay. I have people email me. They find my email somewhere or whatever. I also have people like somebody today, which I'm not calling them out. I thought it was awesome, but it was abnormal for me, where they have my calendar. I have a link I give people to like book time with me. Sometimes people save that link so that when they want time with me, they don't have to ask if I have time. They just literally go to my calendar and they book it, which is actually quite wonderful that they're so resourceful. But I had somebody on my calendar. I had 2 people on my calendar today that I was like, I haven't seen that name in a while, which means they literally like saved my calendar and was like, oh, I'm just going to book time to talk to Ray without even reaching out to her. I'm like, huh, touche.
Well done. Well done. That's awesome.
Do you get more direct messages or emails?
That's a good question. I would probably emails, because I get a lot of emails from the higher ed, from the college people, and districts and things. They tend to send emails, but those are the ones that can wait. The DMs are tricky because I treat them almost like an iMessage, and I'm always worried, like, can people tell that I saw them, or if they can see that I'm on the app and I haven't responded, I've got to respond right away because I don't want people to think they don't have value to me. So I'm on that.
We need to talk about Voxer. I'm just going to put that out there. Can we talk about Voxer? I'm having a problem with Voxer and I need help. I need someone to help me, please.
I am not that person because that's one where it's literally 4 digits, the number of messages I still have to go back and listen to. Yeah. Yeah, I am not the person to help you with that one.
Okay, Dave, can I vent? Help me. I really want to be better. Help me be better. Guys, I know you guys have questions and we have to talk our admin rewind. We'll get there. It's really great topic tonight, but I need help. Dave, can I have a little therapy session? Voxer was made for me, guys. I am not a reader. Like, I love audio. When you guys Facebook or Twitter message me, I listen to it anyway. I don't read anything ever. Voxer was made for me.
So here's how I think Voxer could help us. So, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, when somebody DMs you, you get a little notification and it shows that it was a message to you, right? Yeah. On Voxer, literally every message you haven't heard yet comes up as something that you have to listen to. If there was a way to simply within a thread so they could disaggregate which ones you're specifically tagged in that you need to listen to and respond, I'm all over it. But when I see 1,252 messages, how do I even play that game? You don't.
You can't. Here's my issue though, and now you've taken us down a rabbit hole. One is, have you ever noticed that Twitter DMs, when you go to Twitter and you check, not click on the message, but you check if you have messages, the number goes away, even though it's unread. Which drives me nuts because I will click on a Twitter DM, not click on the DM. I'll click on my message portal and I'll see there's 2 messages from people. And I'm like, oh, how exciting. Can we talk to them? But I switch my screen. Now it says 0 messages. But if you click on it, there's 2 unread. That drives me nuts. Who invented that system? No one. And then with Voxer, my real reason for bringing this up is that I cannot find enough time where I am in a spot where I can listen to people's, like, sometimes I want to have the option of having it in text form so I can read what they're asking. Does that make sense?
Without everybody else around you hearing it, right? Yeah.
What do you do?
So I think we need to have a Teach Better app that gets developed. That's, I think, what we need to say, right? What else do you have going on in your world? Can you work on this, Ray?
Yeah, I'm free. No big deal.
Okay.
Yeah. A Teach Better app that tells you when you have messages, gives you multiple modalities to interact with that message, and allows you to delete them if you just can't handle the messages.
And there's an extra button where we can all just direct message you, and you get like flashing lights until you respond.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Flashing lights, like all different colors, or just an obnoxious flashing light?
Well, mine I think is going to be like bright orange. Everybody else's can be like red or something, but mine will be like the special color, so you'll know that's the important message you got to respond to.
Is this like a bat sign, like Batman sign?
Ooh,
where it's like
that's
in
even
the
better. Yeah,
sky?
yeah, yeah. It's like you're sleeping at night and you wake up and there's a symbol up on the ceiling. That's awesome.
Right. Dave needs you. All right. These shenanigans have gone on too long, guys. We really had more conversation to have, but now look at the comments. They're all talking
That's
about
what happens when you bring me here. It turns into a brain break. I'm so sorry, Ray.
No, this was kind of relevant. Kimberly, how can I describe Voxer to you? It's like a walkie-talkie voicemail. It's like Kimberly, as if I called you, you didn't answer, and I left you a voicemail. That's what it is.
Yeah, and you can be in a group of people who can all be in the same conversation. And that's where it gets overwhelming. If you have a group of like 50 or 60 people and they're all leaving voicemails that follow each other and you just listen to all of them, yeah, it gets hard to manage, but it's cool.
You know this if you're in a Voxer group with me. I just want you to, I'm saying it because I know you know that I don't listen to group messages. I can't. It's so overwhelming to go through your whole day. And at 9 at night, you check your messages and you have 48 messages. Sometimes the Voxer messages are a minute, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 2 minutes. I can't. I love you. I can't. If you need me, call me. I don't know what to tell you.
You are a rare breed. These days, you don't get too many people that say, if you need me, call me. Wow, that's impressive. So nostalgic. I love it.
I love phone calls because then I can give you my undivided attention. We can have an authentic conversation. You can get the personalized support, and I can then step away and know that my message was effective.
Well, you know what? This is actually a super important conversation for us to have. You know, it is. You have to make sure that you're meeting the needs of those you're communicating with, right? If you want to be heard, you have to speak in a way that they will listen. So, okay. If you want Ray, call her.
If you want me, call me. 847-721-5503. I'm sure if you Google me, you can find my phone number. All right, moving on. Dave, what's going on in Admin Mastermind? Because that happens all the time, every Tuesday. And when we do these like Sunday check-ins, it's every other Sunday. So that means there's been 4 sessions. And that seems like a lot to recap, but I love the theme for tonight.
Yeah. And, you know, we talk about this all the time, how there's always this theme that kind of emerges from both the morning and the evening, the multiple breakout rooms. There's always this thing that I can connect the dots and say, oh, this was it. And I know this was it because I've actually had people reaching out to me about this, not in Voxer, but in DMs and in text all week long. And we've continued the conversation because it's a good one. You know, and I think it's one that you can resonate on a little bit as well. And I'd love to hear your thoughts from an educator, classroom teacher, or even a student teaching supervisor in this regard, because I think it kind of transcends. So
it does. You're right. Okay.
We are in a place right now where, going back to the idea behind curriculum and transitioning, where we're saying we want people to innovate. We want you to take on these new approaches to learning, new ways of doing things. Don't get stuck in the way that things have always been done just because it's the way we've always done things. Yet administrators have to come into classrooms and provide observations and give feedback and evaluate teachers. And there are a lot of administrators that struggle with providing feedback or evaluation scores, if you will, when teachers are innovating and trying something different that is unlike anything they've ever seen before. They might come in and see a lesson that's an epic bomb, it's an epic fail. And then they struggle with, how do I provide feedback in that? How do I observe it? How do I give an evaluation score to that? When it could be and should be easier to just play it safe and play within the rules. I don't want my teachers to just stay within the box, but that's the only way I know how to evaluate them. And there's kind of this dance that admin are starting to play right now, and they're not quite sure how to navigate all of these things. So I'm curious your thoughts from somebody that is supporting a student teacher who you have some best practices, some tried and true approaches that you know work, but you also want your student teacher to find their own way. Like, how do you balance all that?
You know, I think this whole conversation is rooted in a larger and more important conversation, which is, what is the core values that we provide feedback on? So I think that there are, when you break it down into categories, that doesn't have to do with the teacher's personality, doesn't have to do with the content you're teaching, may not have to do with the age group you're working with. That one, I think I could find some argument for. But really, like, what does strong education look like?
Yeah.
And so when we brought up this conversation before we came live, I think it really does come down to administrators feeling confident with what they think instruction should look like. What are the core values of instruction? Because then you can provide feedback really strategically on those ideas and not on maybe something that you saw that wasn't successful. Because if you have a teacher who is brand new or 30 years in, trying something new, and they are excited to try something new, and they're probably going to pursue this further, you want to make sure that you're supporting them by giving them feedback that's going to allow them to be better.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at their idea, does the end goal of what they're looking to accomplish, is it data supported, best for students, allow for the teacher to give personalized feedback, like all these different, whatever your core values are? If that's the case, then you're essentially giving them feedback so they can reach that end goal. But if you're going in kind of cold without knowing what the core pillars are that you see as educational core pillars in your building, then you're going to be, it's so much easier to be like, oh, Johnny wasn't paying attention in the back. Why didn't you redirect him? Or, oh, your volume wasn't very loud. Or, oh, it was a total flap, so that was unsuccessful, huh? I mean, it's really hard to give feedback when you don't know what those pillars are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. You know, a Schmittoism that I say often, but I think it fits with this: feedback without the ability to improve is simply judgment. So if you're an administrator and you're going into a classroom just to provide feedback, but you don't ever intend to go back and have a follow-up conversation or to go see if growth materialized from your feedback, all you did was slap a label on a teacher, which is really no different than what teachers sometimes get accused of doing to students, right? If we say students should have the opportunity to progress at their pace and to demonstrate mastery and proficiency based off of amazing feedback provided by teachers, that's what we need to be doing as well. Provide feedback for growth.
Well,
go ahead.
No, but I would love to have the administrator provide feedback based on the teacher's reflection. I think reflection, you and I have talked about this endlessly. I think reflection is one of the best tools we have in our tool belt. So if you meet with a teacher, and let's pretend it was a total flop. Let's pretend they tried something, they saw it, they researched it, and then they tried it and it didn't work. Bummer, right? Such a bummer. No kids were harmed in the making of this failure, right? It was like, It was a flop, but it was fine. Then if a teacher sits down and says, I think it went fine, their inability to reflect is the first thing you must give feedback on. But if they sit down and they're able to say, this is something I saw, and this is something I saw, and I'd like to improve here, well, then imagine the amount of feedback that you can not only shower this teacher with, but you can also share so many moments of successes, which is going to build up that educator to improve based on their reflection.
That's so good. Yeah, so good. I'm going to open up here a little bit and comment on something. It's going to be a little deep, maybe dark, whatever, but I put it out on social media this weekend, so I'll say it here. Yep. I think for some, let me just be surface level. When administrators say they have a hard time evaluating a teacher and they use that term instead of observing teachers or providing feedback to teachers, I think we miss a major opportunity, because evaluation is not necessarily the same thing as observing and providing feedback, at least how it's typically used. Typically, when administrators say they evaluate, that means they're going to slap a label on and a score and say good, bad, or ugly. So it's that elimination of labels.
Yeah.
And the thing I posted this weekend was really a result of conversations I was having with some other educators this week. So here's a little deep insight to Dave Schmitto. A few years ago, I started going to therapy. I reached out and said, I need somebody to talk to try to just help me open up and figure out what's really going on in my head. But I'll be honest, I was scared to death to go because I didn't want to be honest with the person I was talking to. I did not want to be open up and transparent because I was so afraid I was going to get a label attached to me, that somebody was going to judge me by me just verbalizing my weaknesses or my struggles. Although their goal was to help give me feedback so I could grow. I was in a safe place, no microphones, just me and them, no labels, but I was scared to death. Yeah. I think we've done the same thing to a lot of teachers in schools where they are so afraid to open up and say, here's what I'm struggling with. Here's where I want to grow. Here's my real reflections, because they've been put on this defensive where they have to explain everything as opposed to reflect on everything. And there's a huge difference between explaining things and reflecting on things. Teachers should not have to defend. They should be able to reflect. And if we're causing them to defend, they're not going to grow, because that's just going to entrench them in what they've always done.
So I know that we should keep this education related, but really quick, if you don't mind, since you opened the door for therapy, I think it's important to discuss. I've been going to therapy for years. I stopped for a while, recently started going back in 2019. I now go to therapy every other week. And I think that's not discussed very often. And I think that when it is discussed, it's discussed as something that is so helpful, so important. Everyone should do it. It's so valuable. Nobody talks about how hard it is the first few weeks, few months, first year. Nobody ever warns you what it's like to, I mean, let's go through basics, because I've done this a few times where I've started and needed, or stopped and needed to start again. You have to be on a phone and you have to call a department of some sort that has some sort of mental health label, which makes you feel like a great crazy person. Maybe just me, but it really did. And they say, well, why do you need therapy? And you have to like admit that you have a problem, which stinks. It really like hits you to your core. And then they give you a date to meet with somebody that's usually 4 weeks out. So you're nervous for 4 weeks to go. And then you sit down either in a virtual or in-person setting, and they ask you to talk. And the first few sessions, you feel as though you're talking to a stranger. And how hard is that when you have gathered the courage to say, I need support. Mm-hmm. I need feedback. I'd like to be reflective with a partner in an area I'd like to grow in. And it's hard to have that therapist move from not a stranger to a comfortable confidant. I mean, I think that's really hard. Nobody talks about that, at least not in my bubble. They don't.
No, oh my gosh. If we could talk about this for the next couple of hours. But I think it's super important, because we put up hotlines out there and numbers and say, just call, as though it's, just pick up the phone and you'll get a miracle pill. But gosh, it's so hard. For me, the walking through the door the first time was traumatic. It was like a new trauma for me, because I felt like I was just ripped away this facade and this mask that I've been wearing for so long. But then I settled into this sweet space for about 3 or 4 weeks where I was just hanging out with a new friend.
Yep.
By about week 5 or 6, it got real, because that's when like the screws were being twisted and I was having to dig deep, and some of those labels I feared were starting to materialize, and I'm trying to balance. Do I keep going? Do I pull back? This is more than I bargained for.
It's so easy to quit. It's so easy to quit, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that it also has to do with the type of counselor or therapist that you're meeting with. Their personality type is a big factor that nobody talked to me about when I was looking for a counselor. Yeah. Nobody was like, hey, the personality of the person you're speaking with, just like a friend or a colleague, impacts the type of conversations you have. So finding that sweet spot, heaven forbid, which I've had to do, you don't find a good fit, and then you start the process all over.
You have to break up with one. I know. Oh my gosh. Right. Right.
It's so hard.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And I think that there is absolutely some similarity here in the conversation, but for those of you who might be listening, I don't know who right now maybe needs to hear this, and I apologize if we're on a tangent that isn't relevant to you, but if therapy is something that you're looking into, I just want you guys to know, maybe because no one else has told you, the first few months are stinking hard, but the reason you start needs to be with you to hopefully get to the point where it's beneficial. Because I can tell you now, the woman I see, I've been seeing for years, and we had a point in between where I wasn't utilizing her anymore, but I look forward to those sessions because her approach and being reflective with me is extremely valuable for me personally. So I wish you all that type of, experience.
It's all about finding someone that will allow you to dig deep and allow you to reflect. And I think that was the conversation that we started. It's what I was afraid of going into therapy is I thought someone was going to be sitting there judging me and wagging their finger, telling me, here's all the things that you have to do. Yeah. And in reality, it was so much harder because this person put the mirror on me and said, you figure it out. I'm going to stand right next to you and you figure it out.
I hate that.
Oh my gosh, it's hard. But it makes you so much better, right? And it's the same thing in schools. We need administrators that can do that can just stand beside people and say, I'm going to stand here while you get better. You tell me what you want to work on. You tell me how we're going to go through this. I'm going to stand here. And it should be hard. It should be exhausting, but you're strong enough to do it. And we have to have administrators that aren't just slapping labels on people and saying, here's the silver bullet, the magic pill, take this and you'll get better. I'm going to stand here for years, if it takes us years, to help you get better.
Dave, while I couldn't agree more, and I feel like I just had an aha moment with you saying that, that is almost infuriating, because I know that my therapist that I work with, so often I'm like, just give me the answer. And instead she's like, no, I'm here to partner with you to find the answer that you see for yourself. And I cannot tell you how we often joke. I'm like, well, that's not helpful. And she's like, I know that's how you feel, Ray. It doesn't change the approach.
Isn't it ironic that therapists are providing the kind of teaching that we've been saying we need to provide to kids for so many years?
Right.
Just ask the questions and let kids figure it out. Yeah.
Ugh, horrible, but so hard. Guys, it's so hard.
Yep.
But how wonderful is it to have somebody at least that you're walking through it with, right? And that's what you hope this relationship with an administrative leader and a teacher, that's what you hope it exists, is this partnership where you have respect and faith in each other to really be solution seekers, which is so exciting. But I did not think we were going to get here. I'm shocked.
That wasn't in the script.
Dave, we've been live for over an hour. I do want to make sure, we usually do this, and I apologize, I didn't think of it 15 minutes ago, but a last call for questions. If you guys have questions, Dave and I obviously are here to support you in any way possible. We love talking about our administrative mastermind that happens every single Tuesday. If you're interested in registering for that, anybody who considers themselves a leader is really what this mastermind is all about. So whether you're physically in the classroom, a coach, you have a title of a leader, this is a perfect opportunity for you. You can register for that at teachbetter.com/mastermind. If you go to the teachbetter.com website, you'll see all the registration details as well. But we do want to do a last call for any questions, because we really are here to be as supportive as possible, whether it be you brainstorming for your week that you might have ahead of you, or a question you have for the Teach Better team. We're around to help. So we'll let that kind of sink in as people share their final questions. Dave, this is a busy week, not only for you coming up, which I know we discussed earlier in our session, but a busy week for the Teach Better team. I mean, we got a lot going on.
Yeah. Can we kind of just go through some of that?
Sure.
Like ambassador applications, we've talked about quite a bit, right?
Ambassador applications close next Saturday. So you guys have 1 week, less than a week, like 6 days, to apply to be a Teach Better ambassador. That closes on Saturday the 27th. So if you've not applied, super easy application. Just go check it out. So good.
Just do it. Just do it, as Shayla would say. Something happening Tuesday evening with Chad Ostrowski.
Okay, that's brand new, Dave, that we are doing a Build a Grid series literally every single Tuesday for, I think, 8 weeks. I made that up, but it's like till mid-April. So it feels like forever, right? We are building a grid live with a different type of educator every single week. So this week is elementary mathematics, which is so good. Amanda Post is joining us, and I love her. She's a Teach Better ambassador. But every week is a different topic. So we're going to do an elementary art teacher, a high school social studies teacher, a middle school science teacher, a PE teacher. There's so many different topics. We can share all of that as well. But Chad will be live building the bones of a grid every single Tuesday for the next month and a half. So I'm so stoked for that starting this Tuesday. That will be at 7 Central, 8 Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.
Sweet. And then there's Brain Break, there's Mastery Chat. I know you have a conference you're speaking at on Saturday, right?
I am. Dave, riddle me this one. I'm speaking at a conference on Saturday, which is a global event, which is so cool. But the topic is how the reason they reached out was discussing how to build your PLN, like how you form connections virtually, which is almost comical because I don't know that I know how we did it, but I do know that all my friends are virtual. I can't wait to share some simple tips and tricks of how you foster relationships in a virtual environment. Dave, you being a great example, we've never met ever.
Authentic and genuine. That's what it boils down to.
I love that. Maybe you should do the presentation with me. You and I can hang out on Saturday and get this all taken care of.
Well, there we go. Yeah, we'll hang out in real life. And then no, perfect. Okay. Yeah, well, on Saturday I can't. I'm actually busy. I'm doing Ed Camp, Massachusetts on Saturday, hanging out with Bobby French and company. So that'll be fun.
Oh, that'll be so good. Talk about like some great people getting together.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
That's so awesome. Fun. Well, guys, please check out all the things going on with the Teach Better team at teachbetter.com. There's already so many things being updated. We are ending February strong and kicking off March with a lot of excitement. So we're so thrilled to have all of you along with the ride with us. There are so many different things that the team has. So if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out or look at the website. If you don't see what you need, just reach out and let us know. But we love being able to come live with you every other Sunday to have Dave and I answer your questions and talk a little bit about our Admin Mastermind Rewind. So super fun. This was fun, Dave.
Absolutely.
So cool. Well, for everybody else, we wish you nothing but the best stinking week ever. Like you thought it was going to be a good week. We're telling you right now, Dave and I believe this is going to be the best week of your life. So get ready. We love you. We appreciate you. And in case nobody told you yet today, we just really think that you're fabulous. So have nothing but a wonderful week and reach out if you need anything. Thanks for chatting, Dave. This was fun.
No, thank you. And as I used to send off my kiddos on my announcements every single morning, I'd say, this is for you, everybody. Teach Better family. You're smart, you're kind, but most of all, you're loved. Have an awesome week.
Have an awesome week.